Hey, hey!
Good morning. It's great to be back with you all again. We're excited to come share with you. We've been sitting out here in our backyard. We have a beautiful backyard. One of the things that God's blessed us with. One of the primary reasons we purchased this particular home.
Indeed.
In fact, and so
yeah, we liked the house, but we loved the backyard.
Yep. Has an awesome pool. We've done a fair amount of landscaping out here to get things the way that we like it. We're still working on it, but
if you hear the trickle in the back, it's the fountain. Maybe tomorrow we'll shoot from the opposite angle.
Maybe I can. You think
no, I wouldn't mess with it right now. No.
You don't want me to try to do that? Okay. Takes a second sometimes to get these things set up in the way we want to. But listen, I just wanted to welcome everybody that's tuning in. I can see Grant and
hey Grant, hey Melissa.
Yep, several other people.
Leah's there. Wow, Leah, it's early where you're at.
It is early. She's in Northern California, so she's a die-hard Married for a Purpose chick.
Her and Kim, you guys are just awesome. Love having you part of our community, and thanks for watching so early. Hopefully you guys have maybe a cup of coffee or something.
So, listen, for those of you who are maybe watching this on the recording or just now coming on, I just want to point to yesterday's message. If you didn't get a chance to go back and listen to, what was yesterday, Tuesday? Tuesday's message of this week, yesterday's message, then I really want to encourage you to go back in there and listen to it. Julie read one of the promises, kind of a gentle whisper, if you will, that she read over you all, and I think, whoa, that's not cool. And so I want to encourage you to do that. So listen, we've got a couple of things that we want to address today. And so, Jules, why don't you kick them off and tell them a little bit about what we're going to talk about today and get us started.
Yeah, so we actually had asked many of you just different things that you're dealing with, thoughts that you'd like us to discuss on here. So if you have something that you'd like to specifically hear us share, give us some ideas. Sometimes we get stuck at our own head, and we certainly want to make sure that we're adding value to you. That's the whole reason why we're doing these Facebook Lives in this season.
It's the only reason we're doing it.
And one of the things that came in was, how do you make healthy decisions that aren't fear-based? Or how do you avoid fear-based decisions? That actually came in through a few different people. So today we're going to unpack how to make healthy decisions, not fear-based decisions. Want to give a special shout out to Denise, Julie, Dennis LaRue. I know Dana and Barbara are having their own watch party. So hey, if you're technically advanced, go ahead and just share this right now. Let's grab in as many couples. Let's have some coffee together and
you bet. Discuss
together how to make healthy, not fear-based decisions.
Go ahead and make a comment down there. Make sure and let us know that that you're tuning in. Let us know where you're tuning in from. It's been really cool to get some of the private messages from you all, so thank you for that. And then also just to see where people are at when they're watching us. So Jules, we talked a little bit this morning just in our time. We were kind of preparing for this, but yet at the same time it's so pertinent to us. Hey, good morning, Leanne. When you're in the process of making decisions, when we're in a process of making decisions, why don't we talk about some of the principles that we leverage in our decision-making processes that help make it easier to navigate? Because if you're anything like us, sometimes, hey Marilyn, sometimes I run circles in my own head, and I can build a case on either side of a decision a lot of times, right?
Yep.
I have a feeling a lot of people are that way as well. So let's talk through some of the things. Let's talk through some of the things that make a difference for us.
Yeah, I think, if we're thinking about fear-based decisions versus healthy decisions, one of the very first questions that we have to get honest about is, what is it that we are afraid of? Are we afraid of failure? Are we afraid of not having enough money in the bank account? Are we afraid that somebody might get mad at us? It's what's driving the very decisions that we're about to make. Is there anything that is causing me to make a rush decision or an unhealthy decision? And the only way that I know to do that is to really get good and honest of especially before I make a decision, is there any part of this that is fear-based? Is there anything that I'm afraid of that is causing an urgency in trying to make a decision?
Yeah,
How about you?
absolutely. Well, I think starting off, so that's kind of the first principle. If you're in a decision-making process, we have to check and see what's the motivators of our decision. In other words, I've never found that making fear-based decisions serves me. And a lot of times, and I think that, so the first principle is don't make fear-based decisions.
Yeah.
We really try to avoid making fear-based decisions, and I think that sometimes what causes me to be tempted, Julie, to make a fear-based decision is I feel like I'm faced with a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Like, man, it is now or never. If
Right.
I don't do this right now, then I'm going to miss the opportunity. And I think that that most of the time, that's actually kind of a slick salesman or a con man tactic, quite honestly. Now, there are offers that genuinely do expire.
Sure.
There are, if there's a sale on a product and it ends tonight, Costco sends me messages and they say, dude, if you're going to do it, you got to do it now because tonight it's going off sale. It's kind of their last minute attempt to get me engaged and see if there is anything that they have on sale that I want. And so in that sense, yes. However, there's a lot of times when I've been tempted to make decisions out of fear that I'm going to miss something. And way more often than not, that has not served me. In other words, I need time to be able to process what it is that I'm going to do, the decision that I'm making, why I'm making it. I need to hear from God. Lord, is this what you want me to have to do? Although many times I have failed to ask that question. But I think more times than not, if we are tempted to make a decision on fear of missing out on something, then we probably need to take it to the Lord. We need to spend some time inside of ourselves, discerning exactly what it is that's driving that fear. A wise guy one time, his name's Autry Freeman, we were having a conversation and he asked me one time a question that just rocked my world. He said, what is it that you're afraid of? And you referenced this earlier, love. And it shocked me when he asked me the question, what is it that you're afraid of? And I thought, well, Autry, why in the world are you asking me this question out of the clear blue? I called you for some advice.
Yeah.
And what I realized in time is that it was such a wise decision. I want to ask you, what are you afraid of? You want to know what I'm afraid of? I visited this recently in my quiet time within the last 24 to 48 hours. Yesterday, actually, I think it was.
Yep.
I'm afraid of failure. If I'm honest, I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid of being a disappointment. Sometimes when I do things, I think, oh man, it could have been better. I wished I would have waited, and And so deep down inside of me, I have to guard against this fear of failure that sometimes can keep me from moving forward.
Yeah, I think the thing that I get afraid of is am I really living a life of significance?
Right.
And it is a driving factor because that is a fear of mine. I try to temper that fear by saying, what can I do right now that will add value to those that I care about? What is it that I can do to add value to others? And so, if we understand our fears, then we can get honest about it. I love what you said about the whole rushed part, because sometimes we make a decision because we're so afraid that we're going to miss out on something. But the truth is there are very few, if any, once in a lifetime kind of opportunities. So what we encourage people to do is to suspend making a decision. You might give it a 24-hour rule. You might give it a 72-hour rule. Depending on the weight of the decision, it might be a week. It's and if it's a lifelong kind of an impact, suspend your decision. Slow down. Make sure that you're not rushing that decision, and then begin with what you do know.
Yeah, I think that's so key, love. I really do. I'm a quick decision maker, generally speaking, but I love that you brought up, depending on the weightiness of that particular, if you're in a financial difficulty and it's it's a 500 whatever, it's so relative, it's hard to put numbers to it. But if it's a weighty decision financially, you may need to ponder it a little bit, and get some clarity. But then you were getting ready to talk about another point about what do you know, and going back to what do you know, because there's so many times that there's so many things that are unanswered, so many questions that we don't know the answer to, and we can let what we don't know stop us from moving forward in what we do know.
Yeah. So it's what do you know about that you really ultimately want for your future? We talk so much about vision, about being able to see our future. God invites us into that future because He's not bound by time or space, so He's already seen all of our promises in their full fulfillment. So when we get in a place where maybe we feel rushed, when we feel like our back's against the wall, we have to come back to what it is that we do know. What is it that we have been promised? What is it that is important to us? And really get our mind around that future promise, because then we have better questions that we can ask in that of like, is this decision that I'm going to make right now going to move me closer to that what I do know and vision, what I do know about my current circumstances. The other thing too, and I don't want to forget this, is when we said not to follow the fear, the antithesis of that is to follow the peace. Right? We always make decisions that move us from where we're at to a place of peace. We're not running from something. We're running to something that is peaceful, that does move us towards that end desired outcome.
By the way, I just have to say hi, Paul Vogel, saying I love you, dude. Man,
yeah.
it's so cool of you to tune in.
That's a high school friend.
Good friend of mine, actually.
Childhood
Friend. We grew up together. I was just thinking, what you mentioned there is huge, Julie, because for me, a lot of times that is a big contributor to my decision making. Is, do I have peace in the direction that I'm considering go? If I find anxiousness in or a lack of peace in the decision that I'm getting ready to make.
Yeah, like I'm going to do this so that maybe this does this.
So that,
maybe we're grasping at the straw.
It is. And it's usually not a wise decision when we do that. And so always follow the peace. God is a God of peace. He will give you peace in your heart. What's up, Joseph? Good to see you, dude. He will always lead us to peace. He will always lead us to peace. And so I think that's such a huge one. And I love that you mentioned it, because it's one that I love to be reminded of myself. What else you got there that we talked about?
Well, I think
wanted to mention?
It's that we operate from that place of knowing, right? Even if it's a difficult decision, if we know our why, if we know that it's because it's moving us towards, like we had to in previous seasons sell some things that were our toys, right? And it wasn't that it was easy. Don't lament that. We're good. But it's if we understand the end vision, we can make difficult decisions with confidence, not out of fear, but out of a place of knowing that, you know what, this might be a short-term loss for a long-term gain.
I love that you brought that up, actually, because I still remember the day that I sold my soft-tailed deuce Screaming Eagle Harley Davidson. I mean, it was awesome. Yes, Mom, we're out by the pool.
Mom.
Anyway.
It's like the football players. Hey, Mom!
Right. But the day that I sold it, there was a little bit of sadness of letting it go. The day that we sold our H2 Hummer, those were some anyway, I had complete peace about that. I really did. Like, I hated in one way to let them go, but I had complete peace. So when you're in the decision-making process, I want to encourage you to follow the peace. It's a great guide. Love?
Yeah, so going back to the end vision, I think that as we're making a decision, when you think that you're landed on it, and you've made the decision in your mind and you're getting ready to enact upon it, it's to play that scenario out as much as possible. Because sometimes I think because when our backs are against the wall and we're fearful, we might make a knee-jerk response and try to make that decision. But before we make that decision, it's like, how is this going to play out maybe a week from now, a month from now?
That's good.
How does this impact the things that I say that matters most, like my family or my relationship or my finances? How does this impact for the longevity of what I say is most important? I remember a few years ago, we were faced with a really big decision, and we weren't in unity about it. There was a disagreement.
Was it
about
buying a particular business?
No, it was about moving to California.
Oh,
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah, that one. And so there was a huge opportunity that would have given exposure to audiences of 30 to 50,000 people on any
It was a
given
grand
weekend.
opportunity. It really was.
It was an amazing. But one of the very first things that was an indicator that it should be a no response is that we weren't in agreement. But we pursued it out
But
of
there's always a
faithfulness.
process. It's
There
a
is.
progress, right?
Yeah,
Anyway,
and
go
so
ahead.
being able to go back to that, it was, how does this play out? And some of the questions was, okay, well, if I did this opportunity, how would this impact my kids? How would this impact our relationship and the very things that we knew that God had called us to, which was marriage ministry, of creating content. And as we explored the opportunities that literally took us out to California, the place that was interviewing us took us out. We interviewed with a staff of about 20 some pastors. Everything was an indication of a go on their part. They were affirming, and there was a lot of confusion around it because it seemed like who in their right mind would ever turn down this, amazing opportunity.
I mean, honestly, in the temporal sense, to use a Christianese term, in the flesh,
Yep.
it made all the sense in the world. But in practical reality, as awesome of an opportunity as it was,
Yep.
it was not an awesome opportunity for us. And we followed the peace in that decision,
We
right?
followed the peace, and we gave up what would have seemed like an immediate relief for the long-term plan, because we knew what that was, and we knew that the thing that we were considering would have been an interruption to the ultimate design. And so we came back to, we're not in agreement. That was the first key. The second part for it was, this isn't feeding what we say is the long-term vision or goal. And so if you could stop in that moment of decision and say, what is the ripple effect? If I make this decision, how will it impact me physically, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually? How will it impact me personally, in my family, in my career, in my faith, in my community? What is the ripple effect to that?
I think, hey Jessica, I think one of the things that, I think that when it all boils down, when we really get inside ourselves, we know the real answer.
Right,
We
we
know what it is that we need to do. We know the right decision.
Yep.
I think a lot of times I complicate the decision because I want something that may not necessarily be the right decision. It's sort of right, but it's not really right. Does that resonate with you, babe?
It does.
I think most of the time we know, especially if we get quiet and we leverage some of these things that we've mentioned this morning. Does this decision give me peace? Am I making this decision out of fear of missing out on something? Am I being taken advantage of by a slick salesperson or a con person in the
Right.
process of this decision? And also, are we building on common ground? And I think that if we build on the common ground within ourselves, that again, it'll give us clarity and direction.
Sometimes when we're thinking about significant things like what are we going to do with the rest of our life, it's does this play to my strengths? Does this, do I find joy in what I'm about to do too? So there's all those kinds of decisions too when we think about making a decision that is healthy. Does it really bring in who I was designed to be? Because our passions so much serve as a compass to our purpose. So as we think about,
Catch that? She just said something really good. Say that one more time. Somebody needs to hear that.
our passions, the things that bring us life, point us to our purpose.
Absolutely.
And so if we can use that in seasons when it seems difficult or fearful,
See you, Paul.
man, we look at our life and it's like, okay, how do my strengths play into this decision? Am I walking in my strength zone, or am I just trying again to grasp at something to make something happen? And so if we can slow down, does this bring me joy? Will the longevity of this decision ultimately bring about peace and joy? And so I think, Greg, what you said is it's slowing down,
Yeah.
giving ourselves permission to think We're giving you a lot of questions. Another great question is, did you have something?
No, go ahead, please.
Past this immediate moment. We've lately been asking a huge question.
That's where I was going to head. Yep. So
And
good.
the huge question is what is our 100-year strategy? Wow. Talk about getting out of the temporal or the immediate and talk about longevity. We're looking out 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. What's our 100-year strategy? Because one of the things that's important to us is legacy and passing on the torch to others. And so being able to pause and it's like, what do I really envision? What do I want to live into for that 100-year vision?
Yeah. And I heard somebody speak to legacy recently and actually spoke about it in the opposite, I think, of what most of us think about, because he said, I don't know why in the world anybody would be concerned about legacy. At best, your grandkids might remember your name once you're gone, and after that, who will? Legacy to us is not about our name. We specifically chose not to call our ministry Married for a Purpose, or excuse me,
Greg and Julie Gorman.
Greg and Julie Gorman Ministries, and chose a different name because this is so not about us, legitimately. And so when you're thinking about your 100-year strategy, think about what that means. What is the deposit? We want to make the world a better place. Like, we legitimately want the world to be a better place as a result of our having abided here for what little time God gives us. So anyway, just a little tidbit that's for free.
I think the importance is to dream, right?
I do think that the importance is to dream and to think again. I think there's so much power, though, in thinking in a 100-year strategy rather than what's right in front of our face. There are things that we need to address that are in front of our face.
Sure.
But if we don't have a 2, 5, 10, 100-year strategy, then what happens is just like Stephen Covey taught back years ago with the quadrants, of urgent, not important, all those things. We spend all of our time actually focusing on all those things that are just in our face, those big uglies, and we find ourselves being a slave to everybody else's schedule in the process. And when you're in a decision-making process and you're trying to sort out what do I need to do or what do I don't need to do, and having that play out and thinking through how that plays out in the long term, I think, is a great barometer or measuring stick as to whether it's a good decision. I'm thinking about someone right now who's a close friend of ours that is thinking about adopting kids. And they've actually gone through quite a rigorous process for looking at several different groups of children that need homes and things of that nature. And they've had a lot of different things to consider in that process, and I think they've been very wise in it up to this point. And I just want to encourage that particular couple that as you're moving through that process again, to come back and leverage each one of these things that we've talked about this morning
what do you know? What is the piece?
To help you navigate that decision-making process.
Where are you in agreement at? I love to, don't live on the altar of what is urgent. Man, slow down the life of the fast-paced. Get in that space, in the place where you think best. Get quiet. Ask what really is going to make the difference. How does this align? I love the question too, and we would be remiss if we didn't ask it. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? And if that is different than the decision you're about to make, maybe you need to pause again before making that decision. Because is it really aligning with what you would do if you knew you couldn't fail?
That's awesome. Is it moving us toward where we want to? We often break decisions down into what's the next logical step. Paul Martinelli taught me that sometimes we get to trying to figure things out too far in advance.
Yep.
We had a one-on-one conversation about this actually a few different times over the year. And he prompted me. What is it that is the next step that you need to make? You only need to take one step. As you make one step, what I've learned is that the next step will reveal itself.
Yep.
Because if you try to figure them out too far in advance, you know what? The plan's going to change before you get to the end of it anyway, even if you were able to figure it out. So what's the one next step that moves you closer to making a good and logical decision. Just one step. And then you can reassess from that advantage point. We're getting close to time here. I don't want to wear people out, but what else would you add, baby, to what we've covered this morning? I don't at all want to cut you short.
No, not at all. I think that there's been a lot of great nuggets. We certainly would love to hear some of your best practices
Yes.
of what helps you to govern and make the wise decision. We do one last thought, and that is the multitude of counselors.
Oh yeah, please, yes.
Of
That's a
being
great
able
one.
to surround our life with people who are not prone to drama, right? People who are slow to speak, quick to listen, people who've maybe navigated life that are 5 or 10 years advanced from where we're at.
John Maxwell would say 10 years.
Yep.
You know, if you can find a mentor that's 10 years ahead of you in the particular area that you're wanting mentorship,
Yeah.
then they've covered enough ground that they're ahead of you, you know, but yet they're not so far ahead of you that they're
can't relate.
not relevant to where you're currently at. So I think that's also good wisdom.
So surrounding yourself with trusted advisors. I would be careful in that because
Yes.
there are a lot of people, and people always have opinions. And one thing we know about this Holy Week that we share our faith as Christians is that there were crowds that praised the Messiah, and then those same crowds turned around because crowds are fickle. And so don't go to the masses for opinions. Go to
Right.
those trusted advisors. Don't ask
Yes.
everybody and anybody their
And you better
opinion.
qualify them, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And also be careful not to go to the people who are going to tell you what you want to hear.
Ooh, yeah,
You,
that's
you,
a
you know what I
temptation.
mean when I say that? Don't go to the people that are going to tell you, you know, the easy way out or pet you. You know, every now and then I need some petting, you know, and I think you got to measure as to whether it's the appropriate time for petting, or whether you need somebody who's just going to tell you the straight, honest truth, right?
Yep. And then the final just thought that I would close with is that for us as believers, God speaks to us through His Word. He affirms through people, and then He confirms through our circumstances. And so watching vary with great anticipation and expectation, not fear, but towards that desired outcome, the vision that we can see, what doors are opening up to us right now that we can walk through that move us closer to that. And pay careful attention. Sometimes those doors are cracked open. Let's not push them open before prematurely, right?
Don't want to run ahead or lag behind, right?
Right. To walk in step and just to watch. There have been different decisions that we've made because we said, "Hey, God, we don't need some subtle hints. We need some bricks." And when we did that from a pure place of we're wanting to walk in step, we're wanting to walk in agreement, we're wanting to walk in alignment with our future vision, the confirmations came through the doors, and it was being open to look at maybe some new doors that we wouldn't have otherwise explored.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. Hey, listen, we could go on and on with this. I would love it if anybody that's tuned in or anybody that has continued to watch.
Yeah.
I'm spitting all over everything this morning. I don't know what my deal is.
Well, yeah, it's okay. We're not practicing the 6
Anyway,
foot rule between
please.
each other.
It's a good thing I don't take myself too serious. Anyway, if you've got some best practices or a process that you use for making good decisions, please write them in the comments. What's up, Matt Pilot? And I
Oh,
saw
miss you too, Matt.
Will Riddle in there and Josh Jolly and so many
Susan
of our great
Galbraith,
friends. Susan
hi.
Galbraith
Yeah.
popped in there. You bet.
Jeremy and Molly.
Yep, absolutely. So
we
many
love
other
y'all.
people. Anyway, listen, we love you all. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're in the process of working through some decisions, then I want to encourage you to go back and listen to this video. If you've got some great best practices or some good best practices or some things that you think might help other people, please just put them in the comments below. And we appreciate your help.
And as always, if you have some other couples that may be navigating some life decisions right now that are prone to fear or feeling that weight of fear that seems to try to be attaching itself to us, share this forward as a word of encouragement to them.
Bless you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in.
All right, I'm going to push the button.
Button.